Right now, there's a huge race by the world to find a vaccine. And one of the issues that's going to come up, I want to jump to the fact that I'm assuming we're going to have a vaccine, is a distribution. If, for instance, that the American vaccine is determined to be safe and effective, where will it be distributed, or how fast will it get out around the world?
First of all, I think it's important to point out, Greta, that there are more than one vaccines. I mean, there are at least 5 or 6 that are being subsidized and supported directly or indirectly by the federal government. The assumption we're making, which I think is reasonable, is that we will know by the end of this calendar year whether we have a safe and effective vaccine. I'm cautiously optimistic that we will, based on the preliminary data that we've seen from the phase 1 trial. But assuming that we do, by the end of the year, the beginning of 2021, as we go into 2021, we should have hundreds of millions of doses as we get into the year. That means that we should have vaccines enough for everyone here. The companies promise that they will make up to 1 billion doses, and you have more than one company that's talking about that. Then you have the Chinese who will be making a vaccine. You have the UK and the Europeans who have a vaccine. There will be, I think, enough vaccine, if everything turns out to be successful, to get vaccine not only to the countries that are the classical rich countries, but those who are low and middle income that would not be able to readily have access to a vaccine. That's what we're hoping to do.
Is there a scientific definition as to what's effective? Obviously, we're hoping for 100%, but what is the definition of effective?
Well, you know, it's a statistical analysis of proving that it is significantly better than not having the vaccine. We hope that that's going to be at least 50 to 60%. It could be more. I think if it's much less, there may be a reluctance to use it, but it really depends upon how much less. I would be optimistic and hoping that we get something that's 70, 75, 80% or more. I hope so. If not, I think even a 50 to 60% vaccine would be a major contribution together with public health measures to contain this virus.
Meaning that if it's only 50%, you still, you're very strict about social distancing and maybe even masks or whatever.
Exactly. What you hope a vaccine does is that it provides a degree of protection so that it kicks in this issue of herd immunity. You don't have to have everybody protected in the community to be able to put the flames out of a pandemic. If you get a certain percentage of people, and we don't know what that percentage is. It could be anywhere between 45, 50, 60, or maybe even as high as 70%. If herd immunity is about 50%, then if you put public health measures plus the vaccine, then you may get a blanket of protection that would put out this raging dynamics of this outbreak. I can tell you, if there's a vaccine that's available that's safe and effective, I will get the vaccine, predominantly because I think it's important to protect yourselves as best you can. But I would not stop from the public health measures of hand washing, if there's still activity in the community, wearing a mask, avoiding crowds. When the level goes so low in the community, then we could start to be thinking about getting more towards what we consider normal. But right now, if you look in this country, with now 60, 50, 60, even as high as 70,000 new cases a day, that's not normal. We've got to get that way, way down before we approach normal.
Children can get the coronavirus, but I keep reading with the big controversy here in the United States, whether they're open schools or not open schools. But if they have the same virus I can get, and I would be highly infectious to someone, why aren't children highly infectious to others?
Well, we know now, and there are more studies that are coming out, that children between 10 and 19 transmit to adults as easily as adults transmit to adults. If you're up to 10 years old, a study from Korea said that, in fact, it's less likely to transmit to adults. However, a more recent study came out and found out that very young children have anywhere from 10 to 100 times the amount of virus in their nasopharynx. So we've got to be careful. If it's in the nasopharynx, you can assume that it may be able to transmit. So we're still learning a lot about infection in children and how likely it is for them to transmit to others. Where in fact, at the NIH, we started a study, Greta, in May of this year, and we should get the data we need by December of this year, looking at 6,000 people and 2,000 families to ask and answer, hopefully, just that question. How easily are children infected? What is the percentage? How do they transmit to adults? Do adults transmit to them? These are all the questions, the answers to which we hopefully will have as the months go on.
It seems to me that people who have the coronavirus, like COVID-19, it's some people get headaches, some people lose their smell, some get horrible respiratory problems, some get or other organ involvement, some get pink toes. Why does there seem to be so many variability in what people get from this one virus?
That's a great question, and the answer is we do not know for sure. I've been dealing, as you know, Greta, you've been interviewing me with it for years, with viruses for decades and decades. I've never seen a virus that has this wide range of difference in its manifestations. Up to 45% of people get no symptoms at all. There are some that get mild symptoms. Some get sick enough to be in bed for weeks at a time and get residual effects even after. Some have to go to a hospital, some get intensive care, some require ventilation, and some die. It is a very, very unusual to see that wide range. We don't know. It may have to do with the level of receptors. There may be genetic distribution. We don't really know the answer to that. We do know, though, that there are people, mainly elderly and those with underlying conditions, who have serious consequences of infection. But we don't know why, if I got infected and I had no symptoms and you got infected and you had to stay in bed for 3 weeks, we don't have any idea why that's the case.